What exactly is going on with the Lexus and their EV lineup? So their first EV to the market is the Lexus RZ, and that's what we're gonna have a look at in this video. Gonna show you the front, side, rear, and also the interior. There's something cool going on in the interior. But the thing is, this car, it's just not going to sell. It's not competitive enough. And I'm gonna show you why. Have a look at this article right here. So the 2023 Lexus RZ looks dead on arrival with a $60,000 price tag. The price, just looking at it like this and comparing it to its competition, price point, it could be a good thing, $60,000, or it could be absolutely horrible depending on the spec and tech. And it looks like it's leaning towards the horrible price for this specific car. So have a look at this, what they say here. You can step up to the Lexus RZ 450 E luxury all-wheel drive that costs $65,000, $65,150. Adding 20-inch wheels, you have a multicolor ambient lighting and some audio systems and what have you. However, it does not qualify for the tax credit of up to $7,500 because it's built in Japan and not in North America. So that's the first strike towards the sales of the Lexus RZ here in the US. Now, as we move down here in the article, we have a gray one, and this is definitely the color I would choose for this. It comes in a two-tone, which I'm going to show you, which just doesn't look good on this design. I'm going to compare this to the RX, because this design, I don't think this is a pretty design, but I do think the RX looks really good. So I'm going to show you what I think, why I think they're so similar, but I still don't really like the RZ. So about the spec and tech here, you have two electric motors and 313 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds, which isn't in the same range as other EV SUVs in this price range. This is a lot slower, so that's strike number 2. And then we have the range, which I think is the biggest issue here, because we have, with the premium package, $65,000, you get 220 miles of range, and you only get 196 miles with the luxury on the 20-inch wheel. So it's actually the reverse. You get less range for more money, if I read this correctly. The premium, I think the premium is the $60,000 option, as you can see here, and that gives you 220 miles of range. But if you step it up, if you pay more, if you pay $6,000 more, you get way less range with only 196 miles, which means that you're gonna have to be charging pretty much every single day. And this, then they compare it to the Tesla Model Y that goes 330 miles on one charge, and that costs now $54,999 after they seriously dropped the prices on all Teslas. And then you have the Cadillac Lyriq that costs around similar as the Lexus RZ, and that goes 312 miles on one charge. And then they go in and talk a little bit about the driving, what you might experience with the RZ, that it's based on the Toyota BZ4X, which wasn't really a super fun car to drive. So there is really nothing new in the Lexus RZ, and it feels like a very low effort attempt by Lexus to have their first EV and to kind of try to sell this in the US. I just don't think it's going to work. So here we have the design. Let's talk about the design here and the fun stuff. So we have the RZ right here. This is front view, and here you have the two-tone, as I talked about. This two-tone design that I really don't think looks good on this car, especially not with this blue in contrast with the gloss black that kind of waterfalls over into the front end, and everything is just gloss black. And I'm gonna show you how the graphics in the side view also kind of ruins this design when we look at it from a side view. But looking at the front end, we have clear Lexus identity in the front right here, as you can see, with these sharp L-shaped headlight units, and we also have this sharp grille, but it doesn't have the same beautiful integration like we have in the RX, where it kind of fades from up here, and we have a clear definition of its nose, then going in and fades into the grille, which we can see right here. This is so much more beautiful to me than the RZ, even though they look very similar. But here is just a matter of how graphics can completely ruin a car design. That's what's going on here, in my opinion, because we have these cuts in the body right here, for example, cutting into the corner of the headlight, and then we have this two-tone with a less of a cool integration into the rest of the bodywork compared to the RX. The RX just look more grown up and less crazy in its styling, and as I said, the graphics had a lot to do with that in this comparison. So looking at the side view, and my biggest problem here is the plastic cladding on the wheels. I don't know why they didn't decide to just stretch this cladding down here. So we have, let's see if I can make a quick redesign of this and show you exactly what I mean. So let's duplicate this layer, let's pick this color right here, and let's just stretch it down something like this so that it meets the lower side skirt in the same material and not have this spillover of the body color going into the to the lower part and adding this. So the idea with this is to reduce the weight, visual weight of the design, and then when you have this little piece sticking in here and spilling over at the very bottom, it totally ruins that effect. So that's why I want to have this black piece, black cladding, just fill it up all the way to this point, and that would make it look so much better in my opinion if we had that. Just a detail that you probably no one else is going to notice, but these are details that bothers me when I see them, because you wanted to have an idea of reducing the weight visually, and then you just forget about this little part right here, which is the most important section of reducing the weight because it's all the way down at the very bottom of it. So we want to drag down the weight and have this plastic cladding continue into the bottom of the car, as you can see here when I click before and after. Other than that, looking at the styling, typical shoulder lines from Lexus. Crazy design shoulder lines. We have one shoulder going up here, then we have another one cutting in here and fading into this area. I don't have anything against this shoulder line. I think it looks typical Lexus-like, with, you could call it overstyling or what have you, but it still has a very strong brand identity for what it is. You instantly recognize this as a Lexus. However, I don't think it does it any favors by having the roof and the hood, as I showed you in the front view, be two-tone. It kind of messes up everything, and if I bought this car, I would either buy it in like a charcoal gray, as I showed you in the beginning, or a completely black car, so I wouldn't be bothered by this section here not being connected to the lower part. Looking at the rear end, this looks like a coupe SUV to me from the rear. And it actually looks like a pretty decent version of coupe SUVs. I'm usually not a fan of it because the proportions gets all messed up. But in this case, I think it works pretty well having it sloping like this and have the butt stick up all the way to this point, and then have a very tiny rear window, as you can see, with this angle going down. And we have some very clear Lexus taillights with these angles that's also very Lexus-like, pointing in to the Lexus logo in this fashion. I think the rear end is the best view for this car, which is surprising to me because, as I said, coupe SUVs, not really my favorite type of proportions. But in this case, everything else just looks so complex that the rear end is almost refreshing to look at, comparing it to the front and the side view. So looking at the interior, it looks like you can get this with a yoke like we have in the Teslas. And I think this yoke actually looks pretty cool. It looks like it's been carefully designed, a little bit more designed than the Tesla versions. We have this dip right here, for example, and we have some chamfers going in, so it creates some more styling and lines and interesting surfacing that we have in the steering wheel. I think that looks pretty cool. I'm not sure how functional this is since I haven't driven it, but I've read some comments that it actually works pretty well. I haven't tried it myself, but it gives you a clear view of the gauge cluster, which does have a housing for it, which is good job Lexus to keep it inside of a housing. But then we have this big, massive TV right in the center console. This might be a little too big for my taste. It looks huge. It looks almost like a third of the entire length of the interior is, or a fourth, I guess you would call it, is a big screen in the middle. And here you can see the steering wheel option that we have. I would probably go for just a regular old steering wheel and have that familiarity when I'm driving the car in this case. But the interior doesn't feel, if you look at the exterior of these Lexuses and then you look at the interior, it doesn't feel too over stylized, with some nice lines and some nice waterfall design right here. And then I want to show you the sketches. These are the ideation sketches for the RZ, and you can see just how crazy they are. This is nothing that would be anywhere close to production, but it's still fun to see what kind of designs they came up with. This looks more like a coupe than a SUV coupe, and here are the final renderings for the RZ. So I don't know, we're gonna have to wait and see what happens with the RZ. I think it's not gonna be selling, it's not gonna be a bestseller for sure, because it's lacking so many features and range and power, pricing compared to the competition. But who knows, people might love this design. It is a standout design when it comes to EV SUVs. It definitely looks like a Lexus and doesn't have this blob shape, which I appreciate. So we're gonna have to wait and see how well this does in the US market.